Have you ever paused to listen to the quiet murmurs of loss that linger in the corners of your life, much like the faint whispers in a forgotten library? In Haruki Murakami's Kafka on the Shore, these echoes form a haunting tapestry, weaving together themes of eternal loss that resonate deeply with those of us navigating the complexities of midlife and beyond. Today, we explore how Murakami's masterful narrative invites us to reflect on the unspoken voids that shape our existence, promising a journey into the heart of literary introspection. As we delve into this world, we'll uncover how fiction can illuminate our own searches for meaning and peace, offering a gentle, reflective space to ponder the whispers we've left behind. A stray calico cat sits patiently on a park bench, grooming a paw with the detached air of a bureaucrat reviewing a tedious report. An old man in a worn fisherman's hat approaches, sits beside it, and clears his throat. "Excuse me," the old man says, his voice raspy but polite. "About the mackerel you mentioned yesterday? Was that the one near the fishmonger with the blue awning, or the one by the shrine?" The cat pauses, looks at him with unblinking yellow eyes, and gives a short, decisive meow. "Ah, the shrine," the old man nods. "I thought so. Thank you for the clarification. This is not madness. This is simply a Tuesday for Mr. Nakata." Before we meet the old man who speaks with cats, we must first follow the boy who is running from a ghost. Not a ghost of the dead, but a ghost of the future. Kafka Tamura, on the cusp of his 15th birthday, packs a rucksack and flees his home in Tokyo. He is not running from a place so much as a pronouncement, a dark piece of scripture authored by his own father. The prophecy is as old as Greek tragedy, an audible curse of chilling specificity. You will kill your father, and you will lie with your mother and your sister. It is a burden of loss handed down not as a memory, but as a debt to be paid to fate. He sits on a night bus, the city lights smearing against the glass like wet paint. The hum of the engine is a low thrum against his bones, a mechanical lullaby for a boy who has never known peace. He is running, but with every kilometer that clicks by on the highway, he feels less like he is escaping and more like he is being pulled along a pre-drawn line. Murakami tells us, sometimes fate is like a small sandstorm that keeps changing directions. It is an elegant, deceptively simple metaphor. We imagine a great singular storm, a towering wall of dust we can see coming. But Murakami's vision is more intimate, more insidious. It is a personal whirlwind that obscures the path just ahead, that gets in your eyes and forces you to turn, and in turning, you walk directly into the path it has chosen for you. Kafka's loss is not something that has happened, but something that is promised. It is the weight of a future that feels as solid and inescapable as the past. Many of us carry a similar weight, though perhaps a less dramatic one. We carry the echoes of our parents' anxieties, the blueprint of their unfulfilled dreams, or the quiet expectation that we will repeat their mistakes. We flee the small towns of our youth only to find we have built the same town inside ourselves, with the same silent resentments and the same well-worn paths of disappointment. Kafka's flight is a physical manifestation of this internal struggle. He seeks refuge in a quiet, private library in a city he chose from a map, a sanctuary of ordered stories, hoping to lose his own chaotic narrative among the shelves. But the prophecy clings to him like his own shadow, a constant whisper that what is written cannot be unwritten. His loss is the loss of agency, the erosion of the self before the crushing tide of destiny. Now, let us return to the old man on the park bench. Where Kafka is burdened by a future he cannot escape, Nakata is unburdened by a past he cannot remember. His story begins during the Second War, in the year 1944. He was one of 16 schoolchildren on a class trip, foraging for mushrooms on a hillside. Then a strange flash of silver light appeared in the sky. The children all fell unconscious. The others awoke within hours, seemingly unharmed, but Nakata remained in a coma for weeks. When he finally opened his eyes, he was a different person. Or rather, he was half a person. The incident had scoured his mind clean. He could not read or write. Abstract concepts were like smoke in his hands. He had forgotten his childhood, his parents, everything that made him who he was. And most curiously, he had lost his shadow. It was not a psychological quirk, it was a physical fact. In the brightest sunlight, the ground at his feet remained stubbornly unmarked. His mind was a blank slate, and his body cast no trace of itself upon the world. He was a man without a past and without a reflection. This profound emptiness would, for most, be a tragedy, a life defined by an absence. Yet for Nakata, it is a kind of grace. Freed from the complexities of memory, ego, and ambition, he exists in a state of simple, unadorned being. His connection to the world is not intellectual but instinctual, which is perhaps why he can converse so easily with cats. They do not care for his history or his intellect. They speak of the weather, of the quality of leftover fish, of the location of a lost tortoiseshell named Goma. Theirs is a language of the immediate, of pure survival and sensory input. In the silence left by his evaporated memory, Nakata has learned to hear the world's other whispers. This state is not entirely without precedent. Consider the case of Henry Mollison, known in scientific literature for decades only as patient HM. After a surgical procedure in 1953 to treat his epilepsy, he was left unable to form new long-term memories. For nearly 60 years, he lived in a perpetual present, greeting doctors he had met thousands of times as if for the first. His loss gave science an unprecedented window into the mechanics of memory. But like Nakata, HM was often described as gentle, placid, and unburdened by the anxieties of past regrets or future fears. In his profound loss, there was a peculiar kind of peace. Nakata embodies this paradox. His humanity is not diminished by his emptiness, it is distilled. He is kind not because of a moral code he remembers, but because it is his essential nature. He undertakes a great journey not for personal gain, but because a Siamese cat told him he must. Kafka and Nakata are two poles of the same human experience with loss. One is the loss of a future stolen by the suffocating grip of the past. The other is the loss of the past, creating a future of radical, untethered simplicity. Murakami does not present one as better than the other. He simply lays them side by side. He suggests that loss is not a void to be filled, but a space to be inhabited, a different room in the house of the self with its own strange light and its own quiet rules. What is lost is never truly gone. It simply changes the shape of everything that remains. And yet, inside Kafka, there is a voice that is not his own, or perhaps is more his own than the boy who sits so quietly on the bus. This voice calls itself Crow. Crow is the shard of flint left after the rest of the boy has been ground down by the prophecy's weight. He is pragmatism honed to a razor's edge. While Kafka is the wanderer, the dreamer lost in the labyrinth of his potential doom, Crow is the survivalist. He is the one who whispers, "Get food, find shelter, don't trust anyone." He is the hardened, cynical self that Kafka must become in order to navigate the storm. This internal schism is another form of loss, the loss of a unified self. Kafka is not one boy running, but two, locked in a single body. One is the poet who reads Natsume Soseki and listens to Radiohead, the boy who feels the ache of a missing mother and sister he has never known. The other is a creature of pure will, a shadow that thinks and plans and protects its host from the sentimentality that could get him killed. Crow is the testament to the fact that when a part of you is stolen by fate, another part must grow armor in its place. He is the scar tissue of the soul. This division plays out in the Tamura Memorial Library, the quiet haven he discovers in Takamatsu. On the surface, it is a perfect escape. The silence is thick and respectful. The scent of old paper and wood polish is a balm. And the world's stories are neatly contained, alphabetized, and bound. But for Kafka, this order is a cruel joke. Every book he pulls from a shelf represents a life with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A life of choices, consequences, and resolution. His own story feels like a closed loop, a vinyl record with a locked groove, playing the same terrifying notes of the prophecy over and over. The library is not just a sanctuary. It is a mirror reflecting his own narrative chaos against a backdrop of perfect literary structure. He is a character who has read the last page of his own book first and is now forced to live out the terrifying plot. His relationships there are filtered through this same warped lens. He finds a guide in Oshima, the library's brilliant transgender librarian. Oshima is a being of gentle intellect and profound empathy, someone who lives gracefully in a state of ambiguity, existing between the rigid categories the world demands. For Kafka, Oshima represents a third path, a way of being that is not defined by a predetermined script. Oshima's very existence is a quiet rebellion against absolutes, and in his company, Kafka feels a flicker of hope that perhaps his own fate is not so absolute either. Yet even this connection is shadowed by the prophecy. When he looks at Oshima, he sees a potential friend, a mentor. But Crow whispers a different assessment, a possible ally, a source of information. Use him. The true heart of the labyrinth, however, is Miss Seiki, the library's director. She is a woman suspended in time, a ghost haunting the halls of her own life. Years ago, her lover was killed in a student protest, and with his death, a vital part of her died too. She lives now in a world of memory, perpetually 15 in her heart, the age she was when she was happiest. When Kafka sees her, he does not just see a beautiful, sad woman. He sees the mother and sister from his father's curse. She is the embodiment of a love that is both yearned for and forbidden, a magnetic pole of loss that draws his loss towards it. Her tragedy is in the past, a story already written. His is in the future, a story waiting to happen. In the quiet rooms of the library, their two timelines seem to bleed into one another. He listens to the old record of Kafka on the Shore, a song she wrote in her youth, and the melody feels like it was written for him. He is losing the boundary between himself and the prophecy, between his own nascent desires and the dark script he is supposed to follow. His flight from fate has led him directly to its most potent and alluring avatar. The sandstorm, it seems, has guided him not to an escape, but to the very center of its vortex. Nakata's loss, by contrast, is a subtraction that yields a strange new form of arithmetic. The detail of his missing shadow is crucial and more specific than a simple absence. His shadow is not gone. It is merely half as dark as it should be. It is a pale, washed-out gray, a faint suggestion of a man. This is the perfect physical metaphor for his state of being. He is not a void, but a dilution. He occupies space, he eats, he sleeps, he travels, but with a diminished presence, a lower metaphysical density. Where most people are defined by the sharp, dark edges of their ego, their ambitions, their histories, Nakata is a watercolor outline. This lack of a solid self is what allows him to become a conduit for the world's strange logic. He does not impose his will upon reality. He simply aligns himself with its currents. When it rains mackerel and sardines from a clear blue sky, he does not question it. He gathers what he needs and offers the rest to the neighborhood cats. He is the ultimate passive resistor to the tyranny of sense. His journey, therefore, is not a quest in the traditional sense. A hero's quest is driven by an internal desire, for glory, for love, for justice. Nakata's journey is driven by an external command, delivered by a black cat named Otsuka. He must travel far to the east, find something called an entrance stone, and open it. He does not know what the stone is, where it is, or why he must open it. The questions themselves are too abstract for his scoured mind. He only understands the instructions: go, find, open. This is not a loss of freedom, but a liberation from the burden of choice. How many of us are paralyzed by our own freedom, lost in a sea of infinite possibilities? Nakata has only one possibility at a time, presented to him with the simple clarity of a cat's meow. He is a man who has lost the map of his own past, but has been handed a strange, invisible compass pointing toward a future he has no capacity to imagine. This journey would be impossible alone, for Nakata is as helpless as a child in the practical world of train schedules, money, and highway interchanges. And so, the universe provides him with a companion, Hoshino, a young truck driver who lives a life of simple pleasures: women, baseball, pop music, and deep, unexamined cynicism. Hoshino initially picks Nakata up as a hitchhiker out of a vague sense of pity. He sees an odd, harmless old man who speaks in simplistic, formal sentences and seems utterly lost. But as he spends more time with Nakata, Hoshino's world begins to warp. He witnesses the fish fall from the sky. He listens in baffled silence as Nakata interrogates a cat about a lost object. His comfortable, predictable reality, built on the solid foundations of cause and effect, begins to crumble. Hoshino becomes our surrogate, the audience's avatar. Through his increasingly bewildered eyes, we see Nakata not as a man defined by what he has lost, but by the strange abilities this loss has granted him. He has a key for a lock Hoshino never knew existed. The young trucker's life until this point has been a loss of a different kind, a slow, unnoticed erosion of wonder, a narrowing of possibility. He has lost his ability to believe in anything beyond the tangible. Nakata's presence reintroduces the chaos of the unknown into his life. At first, he resists, trying to find logical explanations. Then he surrenders. He abandons his job, his truck, his entire life to help this strange old man find a stone he doesn't believe in for a purpose he cannot comprehend. This act of devotion is Hoshino's own leap of faith. He is shedding the skin of his old self, a loss that feels not like an absence, but like an unburdening. He learns to listen to Beethoven's Archduke Trio, not because he understands classical music, but because Nakata's silence seems to demand it. And in the structured beauty of the notes, he finds a new language for the world, a logic deeper than reason. He begins to lose his old self, and, in doing so, finds a larger one. The two parallel lines of Kafka and Nakata, one running from a terrible future, the other guided by an erased past, are not destined to remain separate. They converge in a moment of shocking metaphysical violence. In his travels, Nakata is drawn to a house where he encounters a man who calls himself Johnny Walker, dressed as the figure from the whiskey label. This man is a philosopher of cruelty, a being who slaughters cats with ritualistic glee to collect their souls for a magical flute. He is the physical manifestation of the darkness that Kafka's father represents, a vortex of pure negation. Johnny Walker demands that Nakata kill him.
The gentle old man, who has never harmed a living thing, refuses. But the being insists, threatening to kill another cat. And something within Nakata, a force beyond his own gentle nature, takes over. He plunges a knife into the man, an act he performs with the detached efficiency of a sleepwalker. At that very moment, hundreds of kilometers away, Kafka Tamura awakens in a strange park, his shirt covered in blood that is not his own. This is the nexus point where their losses intersect. Kafka, cursed to kill his father, is spared the act, or perhaps performs it by proxy through a man he has never met. Nakata, who has lost his memory, his ego, and his capacity for complex thought, becomes the vessel for an act of karmic violence, a living instrument of fate. In killing Johnny Walker, Nakata loses the last remnant of his innocence. He becomes a murderer, a label that means nothing to his vacant mind, but which sets him on the final path of his journey, to find the entrance stone, and then, as he calmly puts it, to return to nothing. The prophecy required a patricide, and the universe, in its strange and inscrutable economy, found a way to fulfill it. It used the emptiness of one man to absorb the dark destiny of another. This is where the idea of loss in Murakami's world transcends the personal and becomes a cosmic principle.
It is not just about an individual's psychology. It is about the fundamental structure of his reality. There are holes in the fabric of the world, doorways between the conscious and the subconscious, between this life and another. The entrance stone is one such doorway. Music is another. When Hoshino listens to the Archduke Trio, he is not just hearing a piano, a violin, and a cello. He is hearing a conversation that bypasses language and logic, a conversation that helps him understand his role in Nakata's journey. The music fills the space left by his abandoned cynicism. For Kafka, the song Kafka on the Shore is a key to the past, a thread leading back to the ghost of Miss Saiki and the mother he never knew. Music becomes a container for memory, a vessel for emotion that can survive even when the mind that created it has been hollowed out by grief. What is lost, then, is never an empty space. It is a vacuum that pulls the rest of reality into a new shape. Kafka's loss of a future forces him into a desperate present where he must confront the ghosts of the past. Nakata's loss of the past allows him to become a pure agent of the present, a man so empty that he can be filled with a purpose larger than himself. Their journeys are a pilgrimage not toward wholeness, but toward an acceptance of their own beautiful and terrifying incompleteness. They are two halves of a single shadow, cast by a light from a world just beyond our own, a world where speaking to cats on a Tuesday morning is not madness, but merely the beginning of a conversation with the universe itself. The sandstorm does not destroy, it simply rearranges the landscape, and when it passes, you are no longer the same person who walked into it. The person who walked into it is lost, and in their place stands someone new, someone who understands the weight and the grace of what is gone. This journey into the labyrinth of the self finds its most literal expression when Kafka ventures into the deep woods surrounding the library. This is not a simple forest of trees and earth. It is a psychic space, a place where the rules of time and logic fray at the edges. Here, he encounters two soldiers, deserters from an Imperial Army unit from the Second World War, who have not aged a day since they first entered the woods. They are living fossils of loss, men for whom time itself was a casualty of war, their lives suspended in an amber of perpetual fear and duty. Their existence serves as a chilling warning to Kafka. To become truly lost is to be severed from the forward march of one's own life story. In this place,
The barrier between the conscious world and the other side is at its thinnest. It is a realm where thought can manifest, where the boundary between Kafka and the boy named Crow blurs completely, and where one can wander until the very concept of a self, with its attachments and histories, dissolves like sugar and water. This is the ultimate loss Kafka risks in his flight, not just the loss of his future to a prophecy, but the loss of his entire being to a place outside of narrative itself. Miss Sayeki, too, inhabits such a liminal space, though hers is one she has constructed herself within the walls of the Kimura library. Her loss is not a void, but a carefully curated and obsessively tended garden of memory. When her lover was killed, she did not merely lose him. She chose to stop time at the moment of her greatest happiness, effectively sealing the 15-year-old version of herself away from the ravages of a future without him. The adult Miss Sayeki who manages the library is a functional shell, a polite and distant caretaker for the ghost who truly lives within. She exists in a state of dual consciousness, one part performing the mundane tasks of the present, the other perpetually reliving the sun-drenched moments of her past.
This is why she can look at Kafka and see both a troubled teenage boy and, with a terrifying bleed-through from the other side of her memory, the ghost of her dead lover. Her life is a testament to the fact that loss can be a form of active inhabitation, a refusal to leave the room where the tragedy occurred. The library is not just her refuge, it is her mausoleum, and the silence within it is not peaceful, but heavy with the weight of a life deliberately left unlived. Her shadow, unlike Nakata's, is dark and whole, but it is cast backward, stretching not from the present into the future, but from the present deep into the immovable past. Into this world of intertwined fates and metaphysical voids steps a figure who embodies the sheer, unapologetic strangeness that governs its hidden laws. A man who calls himself Colonel Sanders. He is not the folksy fried chicken magnate, but a conceptual pimp, an intermediary who speaks in a bizarre patois of philosophical nuggets and street-smart cynicism. He is not a person who has suffered loss. He is, perhaps, a concept that has sprung fully formed from the cracks that loss creates in reality. When Hoshino is utterly adrift, trying to comprehend Nakata's purpose, it is the Colonel who appears to provide a crude, nonsensical, yet perfectly functional instruction manual for the other side. He is the antithesis of Nakata's gentle emptiness. He is all sharp angles, commerce, and profane pronouncements. Yet he serves as a necessary guide through the looking-glass world Hoshino has entered. He explains things not in terms of good and evil, but in terms of balance, of concepts needing to be where they need to be. He represents the universe's embrace of the absurd as a functional operating principle. He is a thought form, a brand icon repurposed by the subconscious of the world to act as a ferryman, demonstrating that when human logic fails, the world will provide its own bizarre replacement. One that smells vaguely of 11 herbs and spices. The culmination of Nakata's journey and Hoshino's transformation lies with the entrance stone. Nakata, the empty vessel, is the only one who can open this metaphysical lid without being destroyed by what lies beneath. His entire life of loss has been an unconscious preparation for this single cosmic task. But opening a door is only half an action. Something must be done about what comes through. When Nakata's work is done and he finally dissolves, returning to nothing, Hoshino is left to face the consequence. A creature, a long, white, blind thing, slithers out from the portal, not evil, but simply something that does not belong in this world.
Guided by the spectral instructions of Colonel Sanders, Hoshino, the cynical truck driver who once lived for cheap thrills, must perform a final sacred act. He has to kill this being, to close the door Nakata opened. This act is not one of violence, but of restoration, a quiet, difficult, and profoundly lonely responsibility. He has to use the very knife that killed Johnny Walker, completing a karmic circuit. In that moment, Hoshino's loss of his old self is complete. He has shed his nihilism and been clothed in a strange and heavy purpose. He has learned the world's secret grammar, a language spoken not in words, but in falling fish, in Beethoven trios, and in the profound silence left behind by a gentle old man who could talk to cats. The loss of his simple, uncomplicated life has been traded for a single moment of cosmic significance. He becomes the guardian of the threshold, the man who has seen the storm and must now quietly sweep the sand from the porch. Memory in this world is not a passive archive, but an active, shaping force. For Miss Saiki, it is a predator that has consumed her present, leaving her a hollowed-out vessel. For Kafka, the memories he lacks, of a mother's face, a sister's voice, are phantom limbs, aching with a presence defined only by its absence. This is a loss not of what was, but of what should have been, a debt owed to a life he was never allowed. The violence, too, operates on a similar metaphysical plane. The murder is less a crime than a transaction, a grim balancing of the cosmic ledger. The knife itself becomes a talisman, imbued with fate, passing from a vessel of evil to one of innocence, and finally to Hoshino, the everyman who learns to wield its weight. The world is governed by a colder logic of symbols, where characters become living metaphors. Johnny Walker is not a man, but the concept of negation given form. Oshima is not simply a person, but the principle of gentle paradox made flesh. The loss they experience is a shedding of personal identity to serve a larger narrative function. They are chess pieces in a game played by the library of the collective unconscious, moved by a silent, invisible hand to resolve an equation that exists just beyond the veil of perception. As we close this exploration, Murakami's Kafka on the Shore leaves us with a gentle reminder that eternal loss is not an end, but a whisper that shapes our journey toward understanding. In its pages, we find a mirror to our own reflections on life, death, and the quiet spaces in between. May these insights accompany you in your continued search for meaning, offering solace and a touch of literary grace. Farewell, and may your own whispers lead you to peace.